the split you're making, because I do see what you're talking about, but I get a feeling that at times they're working together. So it's really confusing. But what I'm asking is, in essence, is how do you tell who the good guys are, from your point of view?
Okay, well,
what I would consider a good guy is not who you would consider.
True. In essence, the super soldiers are bred to kill, so there's always an enemy.
But
there always has to be an enemy. The enemy. Okay, well, the enemy now is they're instigating a race war in America, and that's they're socially engineering it for a race war against blacks and whites, because they're trying to reduce the population, so they're targeting blacks in America as the first group, and it's an extension of what was going on in Africa with depopulating the blacks in Africa with engineered AIDS and things like that. So they're engineering social situations in America now, and then that group is being currently targeted, you know, the blacks in America, and there's a lot of race issues being brought into the media, like Obama is talking about, let's talk about race. In the media, a lot of things are focusing on race to get people's mindsets geared up for that. And it's, I mean, in essence, it's a continuation of social engineering programs from Haight-Ashbury in the 60s in San Francisco. You know, the Manson family, the Charles Manson murders, and he was programmed at China Lake for that, for the social engineering. Charles Manson was talking about Helter Skelter, which was a race war, an apocalyptic race war in America between blacks and whites.
With the Beatles triggering
and
music.
the Beatles triggered that, the Helter Skelter song, and then that was the Manson murders were supposed to trigger that, and that was, you know, the Helter Skelter race war was supposed to start in Haight-Ashbury, the hippie colony in San Francisco.
At the moment, I mean, that actually sounds sort of passé in a sense. It doesn't. Of course, I live in LA, and it just doesn't seem realistic at this time, from my point of view. That doesn't seem like it's going to fly.
But you know, they've often tried to, with the Fourth Reich being based on the West Coast, they tried to trigger this helter-skelter apocalyptic race war in California. With the LA riots, they tried to do it again, and they're going to keep trying to do it until all hell breaks loose between blacks and whites in America. Because you know. To get back to the question, you said, who's the current enemy? Well, the black race is being targeted currently in America, the Afro-Americans.
Okay, but doesn't that seem like sort of an counterintuitive if the president is at least partially black?
But what does he consider himself? He's half black, half white, so is he loyal to the whites or is he loyal to the blacks? I'd say he's loyal to the whites, the Rothschild.
And also, how easy would it be to trigger a race war if it was set up that a clone version of him was shot by a white supremacist? Then that would immediately trigger an uprising. And
that would be a perfect scenario.
Right.
They're going to keep socially, the Fourth Reich essentially is going to keep socially engineering these situations. You know, like the Helter Skelter, the Manson in the 60s, the LA riots. Things will keep happening because they want to reduce the population, so they need to start with target groups.
Okay, and what about the notion that they're going to do it with things like earth changes and with causing, with the chemtrails, and basically they're killing people in essence with the radiation, chemtrails, and disease. There's a lot of thought that they maybe want to spread disease. And then even I've heard that there will be some bombings in prime cities here in the U.S. Have you heard any of that?
Well, I mean, that stuff's obviously going on every month now, with terrorist acts. And it's all orchestrated.
Well, actually, what I meant by that was something a lot bigger than what happened in Boston.
Well, back in Africa, I was friends with some SAS guys who were Rhodesian infantry people before they were involved with the SAS. They talked about bioengineered race weapons in Africa, put in the wells, which would only kill the blacks and wouldn't affect the whites. So there'll be, that sort of things, the chemtrails, bioengineered race weapons
Okay, well, let me throw something a bit strange out at you. I recently heard that there was, that we gave away Africa to a group of an incoming race of beings. Have you heard about that?
I've heard different things to do with Africa and the direction of Africa in the future. I've heard there's social engineering programs where they're trying to encourage African Americans to go back to Africa and give them property and housing back there. And there's one really big one. It was even in the mainstream media. I forget what it was called now. But you know, there's this big movement to get the blacks back to Africa, and I don't know if they're.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the name of this thing now. You know, they were going to give them property and tax rebates and things like that, because there was even, you know, the Muslim movement, even the blacks themselves in their own community. There's a big movement to say we don't really belong in America. We should go back to our homeland. And a lot of Africans who I talk to say that themselves. They say, I've never felt welcome here. I'd love to go back to Africa. I'd love to go back to my roots. There's definitely movements to kind of trigger that. So I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard they're going to try and get them back there and nuke Africa. I've heard they're going to try and get them back there and then sell them to incoming extraterrestrial races. So it could be connected to what you mentioned.
Okay, so, but in your positions, like it's sort of as super soldiers, for lack of a better terminology, do you know, they don't let you in on the big picture, you know, they don't sit around and have discussions with you, I assume, right?
Yeah, they do.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay, so they let you in on some of the plans, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you?
Not for sure. From the beginning, from when I was a child, they explained how it was going to happen.
They do.
I think that was some input from my consciousness and how it was going to happen too.
Okay. Okay. You know, I could be asking you questions all night, but just to wrap this up, and I want to thank both of you for taking the time. When you look at America, you have been told there is going to be a scenario where there's a financial meltdown, and then, you know, sort of riots in the streets, and then an implication of what do they call that, martial law, and, you know, a scenario. Have you seen it? Been told about a scenario that works in that direction?
I've just been told the current scenario is this whole race war thing. That's the current thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether they'll change it to something else, but that's the plan at the moment.
From what I know, that what Michael's saying is right, but that would also lead to when the race war happens, it will lead to some form of martial law, and that's what they're essentially wanting to do.